All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. It's exciting to me today to get to talk to Mark Tremonti. As a reminder, before we get to the meat of the conversation, my goal with this channel and sort of accepting the invitation from Amazon to do it was to talk to artists that I think are really doing work that pushes the boundaries of the genre. And that for whatever success and heights in their career that they've enjoyed, the work nevertheless deserves a broader audience and just more conversation. And Mark has had a long career that I'm going to talk about in a minute before I bring him on, that certainly qualifies him in every regard here. So, you know, if you have heard of Mark, you probably know that he's a founding member of Creed, a founding member of Alter Bridge. He's now into a rhythm where he's doing his own records under his own name. And we're going to talk to him about all of this. But I want to, just for the record, I want to articulate some of the things that have they sort of outside industry sources that have in some ways just lent credibility to the success that Mark has had. He's won a Grammy. This killed me. He's got the song with Arms Wide Open has got 148 million views. I only know YouTubers, like streamers that have these kinds of numbers. So I had to chuckle when I saw just the sheer audience that's had. But he's been named Guitarist of the Year in Guitar World, and we've had some excellent guitarists here. So he's in amazing company there. He's, Total Guitar put him as the 4th greatest heavy metal guitarist of all time. And I understand that these are subjective accolades. Nevertheless, they are accolades. There's, people who work in the industry are acknowledging Mark's contribution. Stunning numbers with Creed. He's got 2 albums that are 6 times platinum, one that went diamond, another went, double platinum. These are just sort of unheard of numbers. Then he rolled into Alter Bridge, has got so many chart positions with Alter Bridge that it would be fruitless. We'd spend the whole hour just talking about that. But I want to mention these things because in addition to the attention to the craft that we know Mark has and that we'll talk about, it's suggestive that he's doing something right to be able to replicate the success again and again and again. And that's really valuable for a lot of our followers who are musicians. So with that, I've got a whole bunch more prep here. Maybe I'll put them in the notes on what Mark's achieved, but let's just bring him on and get to the fun stuff. Mark, welcome.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I want to talk, I just want to start at the very beginning a little bit. This is probably a question you've had, but what was the catalyst for music? Were you in a musical family? Did you hear a song or a record that just sort of suggested that that's your North Star in life when you were a young kid?
It was just one of those things. Whenever I heard a song come on the radio that down to guitar, I would immediately just be drawn to it. So it was, silly songs like I remember Jay Giles' band had a song called "Love Stinks," and it broke down to just this simple guitar riff. So I immediately went out and bought that record, and then I saw the movie Back to the Future. Couldn't believe that scene, blew my mind. And then I met the movie Crossroads. Those were 2 great movies for guitar players that I said, I want to do this. I want to tackle this. And I had 2 older brothers that lived upstairs. One of them was a extreme metal fan, and one of them was a commercial rock fan. And I kind of took in both of those worlds and became a fanatic along the way.
So it was guitar from the beginning. When I said you're of Italian descent and
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Something about Italians and guitar, because I've had John Petrucci on the show, who's a favorite of mine, Al Pitrelli. So I think I was born with the wrong ethnicity.
Well, those are 2 incredible guitar players. I've gotten to spend a lot of time with John, but I'd love to meet Al Pitrelli. He's definitely a phenomenal player.
Yeah. Well, that's just kind of the lighter side of things, but I like hearing a little bit of the backstory in the early years. You later went to Clemson, but you majored in finance. Was that a fail-safe against, a starving artist thing, or was you committed to Wall Street or something?
You know, I just knew that it was a long shot, you know, to begin with, but I knew I was driven. I knew I wouldn't stop unless I was an old guy being told no until I was 40 years old. I was going to keep on going.
Yeah.
So you know, I put myself through college. I worked, you know, in restaurants and car washes to put myself through school. So I tried to put bands together while I was in school, and told myself if I didn't get a record deal, I'd get a degree. I wasn't going to put all my eggs in one basket. I was trying to be, my eggs were all in that rock and roll basket. I wanted it more than anything in the world, but I needed to pay the bills along the way. So I was going to try to see myself through college.
Yeah. But it wasn't, you didn't really ever go out into the financial district. It was out of college, you were doing rock. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I did 5 years of college, and like I said, I was working full time, so I couldn't finish college in time because I was only taking maybe 9 credit hours a semester.
Yeah.
While I was working the day job. So it's, did everything I could to try to find musicians in town to play with, and write as many songs as I could and record. And I think those were the years where I kind of learned how to become a songwriter the most, I think, in high school and college.
Yeah. Well, let's transition and talk a little bit about this. I want to start with your voice. So, you know, now at this place in your career, because you've got Tremonti and you've done vocal work in your previous bands, but of course in this, you know, in this musical effort, you are the front and center guy. I'm always interested to learn if there's been any sort of formalized approach or training, or if it's all just practice and usage where you've arrived at this way you use your voice.
I took lessons from a couple people, but they were just single lessons. And you know, these are smart people. They know how to teach people how to sing, but I just never took much away from them other than warm-up exercises and whatnot.
Yeah.
I feel like the best way for me to learn how to sing was getting out there on stage and surviving. You know, it was,
yeah.
I don't think anybody can just sit in their room and think that what they're doing in their room is going to sound the same when they hit that stage and the adrenaline's going. I think it's, you know, trial by fire. When you're up there singing on stage, you're going to learn to do things out of survival mode that make you a better performer and singer in general. But, you know, that being said, I took those lessons. I did my best to learn the proper way to sing. But I think the best thing to do for me is to, like, for the past 3 years or so, I would take Frank Sinatra tunes and break them down and listen to how he pronounces his vowel sounds, and listen to how he phrases and where he breathes, and all the little tiny intricacies that you're not going to get taught in a vocal lesson. You know, this is stuff you're only going to teach yourself if you're a big fan. It's just, I tried to take what I learned on the guitar and put it over to the vocals and try to tackle, you know, vocals that way.
Sinatra's another Italian.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. My favorite singer.
Yeah. He's of all of that sort of standard era, he's my favorite too. I'm a big fan of that whole era of music. And I had read that he was a favorite vocalist of yours. And of course, for me, one of the things that he's just so consummate at is it always feels like he's having a conversation with the audience. The way he phrases is not predictable. It's so approachable. And there's a lot of that in your voice, in particular in the places where it's softer. And I'm going to just jump to this question so I don't forget. But as I was listening to so much of your music, one of the things that, you know, all the big stuff's really thrilling, and I want to talk about it, but there's a lot of sections where you're playing an acoustic guitar, you're playing on a clean tone, and your vocal stylings against that. There's often I wanted those parts to go longer. And it leads me to the question, have you considered a fully sort of acoustic or sort of lower sort of tempered record?
Yeah, you know, it's something that I recently became comfortable with, is singing in my lower register. I used to try to hide my voice, you know, by singing higher, singing out of my range, so I can color my voice differently so it doesn't sound like my speaking voice.
Yeah. Because
like anybody else, you hear your voice back on an answering machine, you're like, my voice sounds bad. You know, I think everybody is a little I think singers in general, when they were younger, probably didn't, were uncomfortable hearing themselves recorded, unless they were just Michael Jackson. And as a kid, they were singing like, the best singer in the world. But
Yeah.
For me, I tried to color my voice to make it sound as different as I could. And then years later, I'm like, you know what? I like singing along the lines of Frank Sinatra, down in my real voice, where my range is not strained, where I can actually use my vibrato correctly and pronunciation right, and breathe right, and not just scream like a caveman. And most of the time on my records, 90% of the time I'm screaming like a caveman, because it's just what I do in the hard rock thing. But
Yeah.
I really enjoy singing in my my lower registers now. And I think my producer Elvis, he gave me the confidence as well. He's like, whenever I would sing those lower parts, he really enjoyed it, and he'd tell me that he loved those parts. And me, I thought it was a weakness not being able to hit those an octave higher.
Yeah.
But in the long run, now I realize that I'm gonna use that the strengths of practicing all that lower range stuff, and try to put that in some future records.
I read a comment you made where you talked about, for all of the, I guess, sort of, I don't know, success you've had, and people who enjoy your shredding. You made the comment that that's not really, leading with the technique wasn't your thing. It was always about the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems to me that what you're describing, there's part and parcel of that. Like, if you're not the guy who can hit, a high F, don't even try. And in fact, and one of the things I wanted to sort of applaud you for is you were sort of unapologetic about the fact that, hey, when I get on tour, sometimes I'm going to tune down a pitch, a note,
Yeah.
so that I'm comfortable. And I don't, I think there are some purist fans in all camps who like, it's got to be like the record, but you've got a very rational, mature, I think, way you approach the voice. Because I read a whole bunch of your interviews, and how you think about the vowels, like you were talking about, the vowels you're going to sing and where you're going to place the vibrato. And those are things, frankly, that younger vocalists just don't consider.
And I used to not consider that as well when I was younger. And
Yeah.
I think when I studied mainly Frank Sinatra, when I studied him, I would write down the lyrics, and I'd put them in my computer program, and I would move them to how he phrased them. So if one line starts later, my next line would start later, and then I would type it out. If he said appealed, he pronounced it like APEEYULD. So I'd write it out how he pronounced it, and then I'd put over each word, any instance where he has vibrato, I'd put it exactly where he put it. And then I'd write little diagrams of his pitch, so I remember exactly where he's going on it. And so I had these pretty, it's so funny we're talking about this right now, and I've got it right here. I've got pages and pages and pages and pages of Frank Sinatra vocal notes here.
Wow.
Where each song, like in Luck Be a Lady, where he goes, a lady doesn't leave her escort. I got the big capital O here. It's like, you got to really ort. But I dove deep on that stuff, and it made sense to me because I dive deep on the guitar. I like to listen to a guitar player and pick out what makes them that guitar player, and what are they doing. What are their little things that make them who they are, and try to pull those out with using my ear. And I think doing that for 30 years or plus, I'm like, why can't I just do this with vocals as well, and come up with a different system of really trying to imitate him. And with Sinatra, I could do it because his range is my range. His high notes are my high notes. His low notes are my low notes. So I think the lowest note he sings is Together. There's a song called Wave where he hits, that's his lowest note I've heard him sing. And that's by far the lowest note I could sing. So I couldn't necessarily do this technique by listening to Steve Perry. I can't hit those notes, So I got to find singers where I can actually replicate what they're doing. With a guitar, you can pick any guitarist you want, but with singers, you got to find your range.
Yeah, no, it's really smart. There's the whole conversation around finding a resonant vowel, and how that's going to play against the rest, and the vocal rhythms. Something I become more attenuated to is how the vocal rhythms play against the rhythmic audio bed. Those are all just, I think, under valued or less understood elements of good vocal singing. And so it was, I'm a trained vocalist, so it was delightful for me to see how much thought you're using in your approach to vocals. And I think I think the music is, as a consequence, the music, is showing that.
Well, thank you very much. It means a lot, because I probably put more work into my singing over the last couple of years than the actual guitar playing, because I'm just practicing, falling in love with trying to tackle the voice now, because the guitar has been a lifetime thing, and this has been more of a recent thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's bearing fruit, my friend. I've been impressed, and your music has always been good. And this is my segue to the songwriting. And it seems to me, and this is not a rocket science observation, but it seems to me that from the very beginning with Creed, and then on through Alter Bridge, which is continuing, and your own work, that one of the constants is your songwriting. And that's, you can get better at songwriting, but it's a hard thing to teach, because for me anyway, it seems like there's something instinctive about really great songwriters. But I wanted to ask you about this. Are there, in the same way that you have sort of thoughtfully approached voice, and we haven't talked about guitar as much, which is ironic since that's, your main instrument. Do you do this sort of breakdown work on great songwriters that you admire?
It's funny you say you can't really teach songwriting. I do clinics when I'm on tour, and I teach guitar and songwriting, and I do my best. I don't teach. You can't teach somebody how to create, but you can teach somebody how you do it.
Right.
So I give people ideas on how to get started with some ideas that I've used in the past. So it's what I try to do is challenge myself to get a new room of people in there and write something in front of them, write a bunch of things in front of them. And the title track of our new record, Marching in Time, that was started in one of my clinics. So I have the actual recording of me writing the verse and the melody and the guitar part for that when I'm on the spot in front of folks. And I heard myself saying, all right, guys, now I'm going to write the melody, and I sing the melody, and it all kinds of happens in that clinic there. So it was, I'm glad I got to capture that. But yeah, no, songwriting is, I would get irritated for most of the beginning of my career when people would just say, you're a guitar player, you're the lead guitar player. Yeah. But what I really am is a songwriter before anything. The guitar is just what I use to write songs. And the lead guitar stuff just kind of came along for the ride of sitting in dressing rooms for, how 25 years of touring.
Yeah.
So to me, songwriting is by far the most exciting thing to do. Vocal melodies are my favorite thing to write. Me and Miles agree, vocal melodies are king. Everything else falls in place after that. I don't care. You've written the best riff in the world. If you can't sing something over it, the guitar players and musicians are going to love it, but the melody's what hits you in the heart,
Yeah. 100% true.
There's been guys, Eric Johnson and Sat Patch and all the guys who have written these great instrumentals that touch you. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But I think a melody of the human voice really is the thing that best grabs somebody.
Yeah, there is an ineffable quality to the human voice. I mean, I love great rock instrumental records by some of the great, even John Petrucci. I love his solo stuff. But there's and I know that of course the guitar is sort of taking over the lead melody there, but hearing something sung by a human just can have a stronger effect. No doubt about it. And it's interesting to me, what you said is probably a better articulation of what I was trying to say around teaching songwriting I don't know that I don't think you can teach someone to be creative. I know that you're a little bit of a Stephen King fan,
Mhm.
if the internet is to be believed.
Yeah.
And you've read his On Writing. And one of the things that King is, I'm also a writer, and so these worlds converge for me. And he talks about this. He says you can improve writing, but he doesn't think you can teach someone to be a writer. There's something sort of deeply instinctive about storytelling that is, as you know, inborn as all kinds of gifts that someone might have, but that those things can be improved. So it's a creative approach. But this all circles back to my thought, and this is the compliment, I guess, less than a question, is that one of the things that you are centrally very gifted at is songwriting. Have been from the first record.
Thank you. That's what I've worked on harder than anything else. So I appreciate that. You know, that's something that you want to be recognized for more than anything else. That's, to me, that's you know, when I do these clinics, I tell all the guitar players, focus on songwriting. You could be the best guitar player in the world, but you're hunting down the kid next door who can play 3 chords and write a song because you want to be in a band with him so you can play gigs because he's written the songs. You know, songwriting key. It's the most important thing out there for a musician. It's what's going to keep you as a musician, keep your career. You know, you don't have to keep chasing other people, relying on other people. You can rely on yourself to write your own song.
Yeah. I think there's been, at least in certain periods of sort of rock and metal history, to a hyper focus on technique, or specific, you know, personal ability at your instrument, where those things are great and they're wonderful to look at. But if they aren't in service of a great song, then they're just, it's, you know, somehow they just don't rise to any sort of human response in the same way. So anyway, that I just wanted to mention that because all the accolades I listed up front, I think, are a consequence of the songwriting. And that does not mean that there weren't great singers and great band. It's a, you know, it's a team sport, for sure. But it's undeniable that you're at least one of the through lines in all of that.
Well, thank you very much. That's what I spend most of my time doing, is songwriting. You know, like I said, the guitar playing comes along for the ride. You're sitting there with a guitar in your hand. You're going to learn a few things along the way, but when I'm sitting in my studio for hours and hours and hours, I'm not just practicing licks. I'm writing a song. You know, I do practice licks, don't get me wrong, but that's mostly for when I'm around people and I'm in a dressing room. And when I'm writing, I like to be alone when I'm writing. Yeah. So if I'm in a dressing room and there's a crowd of people, I'll learn some licks.
And you made this comment, I saw, that you regard it sort of like a muscle that you need to exercise in order to stay strong.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing advice. It's the same thing in writing fiction. Even if you're a great fiction writer, if you stop doing it for a long time, you don't just start up at the level you left it. Like there's, you know, but there's
a door. Yeah. There's a door that you open in your brain and your imagination that takes a while to open back up if you take too long off. You know, to me, it's like it's almost like a 2-week process of getting that back to where you're feeling creative again. You know, I doubt when I go on a hiatus. So sometimes when I finish writing a record, I will say, now it's fun time. Now I'm just going to pick up the guitar and I'm going to play some lead stuff and just play around on the guitar and not worry about the next album for a while. And then after I take, you know, 2 or 3 months doing that and I come back to songwriting mode, that's when I doubt myself. Hey, did I lose my mojo? Did I lose my thing? And then you'll have one night where it all comes back, you know, and sometimes it takes 2 weeks, but you never know. But that's the exciting thing about songwriting, is when you're capturing that lightning in a bottle, it hits you out of nowhere. You know, you don't have no idea where it's going to come from. And when it hits you, you know it. And that to me is the biggest rush as a musician, capturing that lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
When your song is the addiction that keeps me going as a songwriter.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. I have, you know, you're obviously at the other end of the spectrum, but what success I've had in music, there's 2 moments I love. And it's the moment of creation when I'm doing the songwriting, and then it's getting to share that live on stage.
Oh,
Uh, I would suffer all of the indignities of of the
yeah,
rock world for those 2 moments.
absolutely. You know, the release days when you release your singles or your album comes out, those are exciting days. Some of my favorite times are the month or so in between mixing and release, where you get to kind of listen to your album when it's still a secret to the world, and kind of anticipate what folks are gonna, how they're gonna receive it. And um, you know, it's what keeps us going as songwriters. I love it.
Yeah. Well, good. Let's dive into the music a little bit. And
Yeah.
there's, we're not going to have time to go through it in great detail, and I want to sort of backload towards the most recent stuff. But I want to just ask a couple of questions. Out of the gate, there was so much success for Creed, like just enormous success.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, did that success create more pressure or more freedom? And what I mean by that is, was there, was the record label and even inside the band or inside yourself this like, oh man, I've got to replicate this? Or did the success of it somehow liberate you? It's like, oh, I'm validated, like I can do this now, and then it flowed more easily.
I think both at the same time. You know, it was. I think at first there's a lot of pressure. You know, it was you put out your first single and it starts doing well, and then you hear the industry say you're a one-hit wonder, and then you come out with your second single and it does well, and then your first record's over with, and they say, all right, you're going to have the sophomore slump on your second record, and then the second record comes out and it does well. People are always doubting. People were doubting us the whole way, and and towards the end, people just straight up wanted us to fail. We had a lot of people on our side in the first couple of records, but by the third record, it seemed like a lot of folks were, I think, tired of hearing us on the radio, and tired of we were everywhere at one point, and we just started getting some backlash from it. So it was the freeing up thing that you're talking about, feeling like, all right, now I'm free to do my thing. I don't think that happened for me until the AB3 record. I still think on One Day Remains, I was in survival mode, 100%. Blackbird, when we were writing and recording Blackbird, we had no manager, we had no record label, we were on our own. Oh wow, we were pretty much at the bottom. We didn't know if we had a future. And I think the Blackbird record is the best record we ever did. After Blackbird, after we kind of had the success of that record and started doing AB3, I started noticing, or just thinking to myself, I think we're at the point now with our fan base, it's so loyal that as long as we keep putting out stuff that we've worked very hard on, that we always will, that our fan base is always going to be there for us. It's not a, when I was younger, I thought, by the time you turn 27, you're old and you're going to have to retire. But I think our fan base has grown with us, and I feel pretty confident that they'll be with us until we want to hang it up.
Yeah, you guys are in that rarefied air of having an audience that is your audience. They're not the ones that are listening to whatever sort of transitory tune comes across the radio or Spotify, which is an enviable position to be in, but an earned position, right? I mean, you put out good music again and again and again in order to earn that fan base. Which is to your credit, because you guys have done that. But it's still interesting to hear you talk about, like, even after so much success, there's still moments where you guys were feeling like, oh, how close are we to just having to hang it up?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of those moments, and this is all I've ever wanted to do. So this is when I had all the success in the world with Creed, and I saw it all falling apart. Me and Scott Phillips, our drummer, we would both kind of quit the band and then talk each other back into the band at the same time. That went on for like a year, where I'd say, I'm tired of this. I'm over it. And then Scott Phillips would be like, come on, man, don't leave me here. And I do the same thing with him. And finally, one day we both kind of agreed at the same time. We didn't get into this when we were younger to be in a band that was just going to be a stressful career. We wanted to get into this and musicians. So we had figured at that point we had enough success to at least get the door open for us on another project. So we looked for a singer that was as different from Scott as we could to start over, just so we're, the last thing we wanted to do was start a new band and cover Creed songs. We wanted to do something different. So we found a singer that was very different. And, looking back on it, I think that was a pretty ballsy thing to do, because it probably alienated a lot of our fan base that liked a certain sound that we immediately changed. But I think at that point in my career, I learned, you gotta keep yourself happy and do what you as a fan of your music would want to hear.
And one of the things about that is, so it's true, you guys have earned this audience that's going to come along for the ride. But would you agree with the idea that in general, rock and metal fans are, they're not fans that are of an age anymore? Like because maybe it's because rock and metal isn't the thing that's principally listened to by teenagers the world over. But do you think that there's in some way that creates more opportunity for people who want to play rock and metal to not be so restricted by age?
Yeah, like I said before, I thought that, if you came out in your early 20s, you would have until by the latest you turned 30 before you were ousted, and
yeah.
It was a young man's game. But I think, there were certain things that the internet brought that were bad, and certain things that were good. I think one good thing was all the people that we grew up listening to, because of this huge oversaturation of music and everybody can hear anything whenever they want, everybody still loves the bands that were out before it all happened to be that way. So bands like Iron Maiden and will tour until they're 80 years old if they want.
Yeah.
Metallica's, all the bands that had their foot in the door before the internet really took off and all the streaming things took off and the YouTubes and everything, I think now can go as long as they want. And I think that wasn't the case before. And I think we're lucky to be able to be one of the bands that can, that have been around long enough to have a career that we can, ride out until we just feel like it's time to hang it up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And there is a saturation, even in rock and metal, for its corner of the sort of larger music category there's an inundation of new records. And some of them are good, but if I can kind of cohere this whole conversation a little bit, the thing that's absent on a lot of it, this sounds like I'm throwing shade and I don't mean to do that, but the thing that's absent on a lot of it is songwriting. It's easy now to be really sort of mean and aggressive, and you can get all kinds of sounds, and you don't have to go to studios now to have good production. There's so many tools available to everybody. It's the same thing that's happened in writing. I keep drawing that analogy, but I think sometimes it helps bring clarity to what I'm trying to say. And that is, today the tools exist, so you can just type out whatever your story is and hit a few buttons and publish it to the world on Amazon. Part of that's really cool. And part of it also creates this absence of, sometimes they're called gatekeepers, but people who understand what good fiction is. And their job is to help us make sure we get the good stuff, and we don't have to start parsing among a bunch of stuff that is just not ready, doesn't have the craft work. And I think it's the same with music. I hear so much stuff, and there's raw gift down in it, but some of it's just it can get to me so fast that there's it doesn't seem like those who are involved have paid enough attention to their craft. And that sounds like a get off my lawn statement a little bit, but I don't know if I find some truth in that. And but you guys, you do predate this democratization, as it's called sometimes, of music availability and distribution. And, but you've done it I don't think it's just because of that. I think it's because you guys write good tunes. Like, in fact, I think your most recent record, this might draw some blowback for me, but I think it's the best record you've ever written.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I say that having over just the past couple of days, done the I did like almost a full catalog listen to all your stuff. I just, marathoning it because I wanted to see if I could understand something about the genesis of your career. And
Mhm.
what my big takeaways were, the songwriting was in evidence at the beginning, and sonically there have been changes. And I know that you personally are a fan of trying to inject something into each record in order to do something new.
Yeah.
But this most recent record for me is a high watermark for you in terms of the vocal work you did, the some of the creative techniques you did, and I want to talk about those in a minute on some of the tracks, and the maturity of the songwriting, some of the choices that are made. I just was really impressed by that, and it made me think, well, that's a person who's not content.
No, I mean, it's the never ending quest for writing the perfect song or the perfect album. It's why we keep doing it. It's on this record. As far as the solo record, the Tremonti band stuff is gone. I had more time to put this record together than any of the other ones by far because of COVID and because of all the downtime. It was the first time I really had, a year and a half to think about a record and put it together. Usually, it'll take me 2 years to write an album, but I'm not focused just on that album. I'm touring and I'm doing a bunch of things. But I got to, instead of spending a couple of weeks making demos for this record, I got to spend 3 months making demos before pre-production. So it was, when we hit the studio, these songs were so done from start to finish, as far as the arrangements, the lyrics, the transitions, everything was ready to go. So when we played the songs for Elvis, he's like, yeah, we got to cut four of these songs and then let's go with the rest. They all sound great. We didn't need to pick them apart, or they had been picked apart to death, already, which I think as a songwriter is not good to do every single record. I think it's good to do every few records. I think sometimes it's great to do that record where you're capturing lightning in a bottle and you're doing it kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's great to really cross every T, dot every I on a record. You're going to get different records both ways. And if you listen to Alter Bridge Blackbird and you listen to Alter Bridge Last Hero, completely different songwriting processes. Last Hero was lightning in a bottle. Blackbird was meticulously planned out and tons of time put into it. So I like the fact that for the first time in my career as a solo artist, I got to spend that time to do that album where we got to spend all the time in the world on every single arrangement idea that we could, anything we could throw at the songs, we threw at them before we knew it was going to be finalized.
Now, before we dive deep on your most recent record, I don't want to do short shrift to Alter Bridge. Let me ask you a few questions there. And some of this is going to reflect my bias because I love narratively based music, concept albums in particular. And there's a sense with AB3, sort of a loose conception. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was Alter Bridge's darkest record. I think that was when Miles and I were kind of having those conversations about, Miles just doesn't believe, he doesn't have any, Miles is about the best guy in the world, nicest guy in the world, but he, when it comes to God and faith in general, I think he jokes about it, but he kind of throws away like, doesn't believe anything and thinks it's all kind of silly, it's like but he says that on the outside, but then he writes these songs, like Show Me a Sign about, that's a dark song. That's a dark song about the thoughts of faith and whatnot. And if you look at Words Darker Than Their Wings, that's a direct conversation between me and Miles about how we both feel about God and about a life beyond our lives. And I don't know if, just like anybody else, I don't know if God exists, but I hope he does. I hope there's some better, bigger purpose for all of us. And Miles is just like, there is no bigger purpose. This is just be a good person while you're alive kind of thing. Yeah. And it's just kind of a conversation between two people with different views, and, it's that record kind of dealt with that kind of issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it, and do I remember that the catalyst for that was a phrase from Game of Thrones?
Where Sarkin and the Wings was when I was reading Game of Thrones. I came across that line. I just thought it was an incredible line.
Yeah.
It came from, they were sending their crows or their ravens from castle to castle delivering messages. And so that the words in those messages were darker than the bird's wings. And it's just such a cool line. I was like, I got to use that somewhere. Just like the first record, One Day Remains, I was watching the movie Donnie Darko. And as that movie went along, it would say, 30 days remain, 14 days remain. And that got down to 1 day remains. Like, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Line. 1 day remains till what? So I thought that was a good title for the first record.
You guys also did, Alter Bridge also did a graphic novel, right? When it came to that, did you participate at all in any sort of the narrative stuff, or did you kind of just give them a concept?
No, they kind of ran with it and then would turn stuff in to get our approvals on it. I changed a few things, but for the most part, it was just let them loose. We had great artists, great storytellers just to do their thing. It's definitely much more comic book style than it is, like a novel kind of style. So I didn't feel like I should, butt in too much. I think they knew what they were doing. The artwork is awesome. It's, to be honest with you, I've had to read through it very quickly a whole bunch of times. So I haven't been able to just sit down and relax and read it at a nice slow pace. I've had to read it like, 10 times super fast.
Yeah.
I'd like to sit down and just enjoy it.
Yeah. I didn't even know about it. So I'm going to have to pick up a copy.
It looks great. The station's amazing. The case and everything.
Yeah. The product packaging looks really well done. As I step into marching in time, one of the questions I have is, how do you make decisions around what music you write belongs to Alter Bridge versus your own band?
Well, as soon as I finished writing or finished recording a record, like when I finished Walk the Sky, I immediately just turned my brain on to writing the next record, next Tremonti record. But what I'll do is I'll immediately put on my metal hat and go in the heavier direction than the Alter Bridge stuff. So if it's got any kind of speed metal influence, any kind of horse gallop and rhythm guitar stuff on it that I loved growing up playing, oh my gosh, I grew up on Slayer and Exodus and Anthrax and Metallica and Megadeth and all that stuff. So Testament, and my metal rhythm guitar that's home base for me.
Yeah.
That's where I'm, certain guitar players, when they grew up with a certain technique, they'll always have it no matter what, if they're warmed up or not. The metal rhythm stuff is kind of where I started. So I forgot what the question was.
Well, it was how you make the decision to have something be. Yeah.
So that stuff I was getting into, all the metal stuff, I can't really do an Alter Bridge because my rhythm section looks at me like I'm crazy. If I pull out a Megadeth style riff, they're like, come on, man, we're not that kind of band. So that happened to me over and over and over again until I started my first Tremonti record. And that record had the Wish You Wells and all the, metal stuff in it. And so that being said, whenever I have a metal idea, it goes to Tremonti no matter what. If I have something I feel strongly about that I think is a great idea, but I can't necessarily sing it the way I hear it in my head, I save that for Miles. Because when I'm writing vocal melodies, I write in my falsetto. Because if I'm writing for hours and hours and hours, I can't sing in my full voice. Also, my full voice, and I teach this at my songwriting clinics, is when you're writing a vocal melody, if you're using your full voice, you're only limiting yourself with your melody to where your voice can hit.
Right.
Your imagination can go way higher and way lower and way all over the place. And once you find that melody, then you can take your guitar and pitch it to where you can sing it. But in the meantime, whatever key you're singing at the time, if you can sing in your falsetto, it's limitless. You can sing wherever you want.
Right.
And I also, people, when I'm writing melodies, I try to consider myself like, when I'm singing in my falsetto, I'm like Robert Plant. I'm like whoever the hell I want to be at that
Yeah.
moment. I can imagine myself being the greatest singer on earth. If I'm singing my normal voice, I hear myself and I limit myself, my creativity. But if I think outside the box as I'm somebody else, I feel I feel like I write better stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really smart writing technique, to remove limitations. And you do a good job in the Tremonti stuff that does have this heavier approach. It's got some of the thrash or speed metal. There's also, even in those songs where you're doing that, that home bass you talk about, picking, you break out into melodic sections that are less typical of that style of music. And that's, to me, that's part of what's defined the signature for Tremonti. It's not all the songs, but songs like You Waste Your Time and Another Heart, like those are quintessential Tremonti songs to me. Just because of the, how they start out and they have all of that expectation of that heavier metal. And these other sections are still metal, but there's more space in them, and the melody is more evident to me in the verses and the choruses.
Yeah, it's to me, melody is the most important thing again. And what I'm trying to do as a songwriter is combine everything I've ever loved about music. And when I was a kid, my parents listened to 70s soft rock, and I love it. It makes me feel good. It just makes me, to me, that's some of my favorite melodic stuff is from Jerry Rafferty, or, the old school 70s rock, Michael McDonald stuff, or, all that, all good old stuff. Christopher Cross. And then I try to take the melodic approach they had and throw them in a band like Metallica, see what would happen, or throw them in, but I also like doom, I like dark music. I don't like anything in the middle. I like everything to be either super triumphant and uplifting, or dark and desperate and just mean. I like to hit both ends of it, and then somehow sing over it all and make it melodic. But I would love to do projects that go completely that other direction and not have any, just do a dark, heavy thing and have it just be the darkest thing or done. But I don't know. There's not enough time in life to be able to do all the things you want to do.
Well, one of the things I like about this Marching in Time record is, and I don't know if this is deliberate or if it's just an organic sort of outgrowth of the time in which it was written, but there is a dark edge to it, but so many of the choruses provide relief from that. And I don't know if that was just an instinctive thing because of what you were writing about, like thematically, or if you were like really intentional.
Well, a lot of times, the song will be about some sort of struggle, and then that chorus is kind of like I'm talking broad strokes here. Sometimes that chorus is a release from that. Say you're in some kind of like Let That Be Us. I think the chorus is pretty much let's leave everything behind. Let's not worry about the past. Let's just worry about what we got now. Let that be me and you. Let that be whoever's listening to this song right now. Let that be us. Let us find peace. Let us leave the past behind, kind of thing. But then the verses will be kind of the story of why people might feel that way, the struggle. So that chorus is the release a lot of times. I try to write songs around the chorus. The chorus is the key. It's the heart of a song. And more times than not, the song will start from the chorus down. That's, I could have the best verse in the world. If you don't have that chorus, it's not a song.
Yeah, that's right.
You could verse and you could have a mediocre verse. Not that I'd ever want to do that, but it's still going to be a great song if you have an incredible chorus.
Well, there's some, I want to call attention to a few turns of phrase. In Marching in Time, you write, I know you will see if you believe the more that you give, then the less you'll ever need. Like that's a very, I'm not trying to fix you with a label, but it's a very Christian attitude. This idea that the more you give, you're rewarded for doing that, like your inner growth. And there's other religions that have the same idea, but it's a really, really powerful human value you're writing about there.
Yeah, and I'm not a big organized religion guy. My growing up, my parents might take me to Christmas or take me to church on Christmas or something, or maybe Easter.
Yeah.
Other than that, I didn't really have a big religious background, but I do have that as a father. I want my kids to be the best kids they can be, and that song was about a father speaking to his daughter about how he wants her to live her life, or how he wants all my kids to live their lives. And I think in general, religion's trying to teach people how to live their lives. So I guess it's the same kind of, it's coming from the same kind of thing.
There's some, yeah. I mean, there's some sort of desire to teach values that have some sort of, I don't know, kindness in them. There's and I guess hope. There's a lyric you have in The Dying Light that says, "In the dying light, we can begin to live again when we wake up to eternal life." It seems like it's prefiguring that, hey, there's a lot of darkness. There's there's going to be tribulation and challenge, but there's something beyond that, and so that there's, you needn't be fearful in the face of those things. And those are really strong ideas, especially for children.
It's funny that you say that's a Miles Kennedy lyric, the guy who claims he doesn't believe God, and and
you can write from a fictitious place, right? Just get in the mindset of something. But it is interesting. I don't know if this is like you were saying before, like sometimes you just really hope there is something, even if you don't know what that's about.
And there's been so much stuff along the way, even people who just straight up say God doesn't exist, have to admit, there's a lot of things in this world that don't make a lot of sense, that we know nothing about. I mean, how many times have you heard people talk about seeing a ghost, or seeing a spaceship, or seeing, all these things that most people don't believe in? I think I saw a spaceship when I was like in college. I think I saw a spaceship. And when I explained what I saw to my drummer, Ryan, he thinks he was abducted. And so it's these things that's like, some people just straight up don't believe, and you have others who might have seen glimpses. So I've got a story that it really hit me hard about when my mother was dying. And I don't want to get dark here, but my mother was in a coma for months, and she was dying, and I was up in Chicago, and me and my brother Dan would take turns sitting with her just to make sure she was okay. And one night it was my brother's turn, and he, in his head, was cursing God. He was saying, how could you do this to me? How dare you? She's such a wonderful person, and this and that. My mother woke up out of not speaking for I don't know how long, and looked at my brother and said, "Danny, don't ever doubt him. Blah, blah, blah. He's, real," and this and that. Shut her eyes, never said another thing. My brother tells me this. I never thought of my brother, considered him ever somebody who makes something like that up. And it's one of those things that just floors you. You're like, are you kidding me? Are you? Because I was up there. I saw how long she was just not saying a word, and he wasn't speaking out loud. So that's one of those things that, most of the people watching this will be like, it's not real. It's real. It was real. Why would
that's the way I feel too. I am a person of faith, but even were I not, I think it would be hard for me to turn a blind eye to things like surgeons who say what happened in there is just beyond medical science to explain. I always remember, I'm an English major. I'm a refugee, I say, from the humanities. But my Shakespeare time, there's that quote says, "There's more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy." I just think that's, we can be as smart and as reasoned, as rational as we want, and yet there's going to be things we don't have answers to.
Same thing Einstein said. He was completely, God doesn't exist, for his whole life, and then towards the end there, he's like, this world is so complex and so beautifully written in this, that the cosmos is so complex. He's like, there's no way in the world that it's just an accident. And at the I think in the end, he said there must be something out there that created this, because it's all beautifully woven together to create all that exists. It's just way beyond any of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those sentiments. Well, look, we're right at the time here. I'm just kind of looking through my notes. This last record is so good. I mean, all of the work is, but I really do think that you're firing on all pistons now. And I love you in front of the mic. I love Miles too, of course. But there's, I love that you're, and you have been for a while now. But I think your vocals are getting stronger. I have a particular bias there, so I listen pretty closely to that stuff. I want to ask you just a couple more quick questions. There's in your song "Thrown Further," it seems to it's kind of this thematically. It's kind of about this idea that you become as an adult, you become disappointed in where you have arrived, because I think all kids think they're going to be astronauts. They've got like big ambitions. Where did this idea to talk about this come from?
I think that was one of the, coming out of this whole depression of sitting at home for a year or more. I think it just kind of came up. I think sometimes when I'm writing lyrics, I just spit words out and then I try to make sense of them as they come out and try to create a story from them.
Yeah.
And to me, the essence of that song is it's about somebody who's disappointed they've become as a person, and you're you're further away from that child who had all these ambitions and all these, liked themselves, and it's not necessarily, I don't write every song about myself. Maybe sometimes I felt that way on and off, but I think sometimes people are in a good mood. Sometimes there are people in a bad mood. Sometimes they get depressed. I think I started writing that song when I was a little on the darker side of things. And that's not meant to say that I'm disappointed in my career or my beautiful family that I have.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, man, you've been more than gracious with your time. I want to commend everybody to your most recent record, Marching in Time. I know you've gone through some postponements. You have plans for the tour, a touring of it more next year?
Yeah, we have a tour scheduled for, I think, January 15th. We start in Europe. And then in February, we're going to make up for a lot of the shows that we just missed out on this tour. I mean, it's just a devastating way to end the tour. And we're going to do everything we can to make our schedule open up for the next, the makeup of this tour. So it's still being put together, but we're going to do our best to hit all those shows.
Will that push the next Alter Bridge out a little bit?
No, we're still going in the studio in April and May with Alter Bridge.
Okay.
That's my big stress right now is, with this Marching in Time record, I could take my time, do whatever I wanted, but with this next Alter Bridge record, April is coming quick. So me and Miles are kind of me and Miles are very alike when it comes to work, and we're both stressed out about it. And then we'll have a good week, and then we'll feel great about it. And then the next week we'll feel stressed about it. Then we'll have a couple good days to feel good about it. So it's this roller coaster until you hit the studio. But we'll never record a record unless we feel like it's ready to go.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Well, thanks for spending some time with us today. So much good music. We'll look forward to seeing you out on the road. Look forward to you doing this softer, like more acoustic record someday. I think you'd be amazing at that.
Well, I've got an album coming out next year that's top secret. It's getting announced March 21st. That's different than anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it's all for charity. So I want to help spread the word about it. I'm starting an organization called Take a Chance for Charity. And it's going to be challenging people with a platform to do something that nobody would ever expect them to do, to raise money for charity. So
that's cool.
Say you're a say you're a boxer, go wrestle somebody for charity, or say you're a heavy metal singer, go sing a country song for charity. Just something fun to raise money. And I'm going to do the first project, and it's one of the most exciting things I've ever worked on. And the album I recorded an album and it's done. It's just for finalizing the mixes on it. And it's something way different than anything I've done before.
Okay. So, and this is how you're kicking off this new program, is with this album?
This album will be, you know, my daughter has Down syndrome, and it made me want to do something to help, you know, and help other folks. And so she inspired me to start this, and we started this thing called Take a Chance for Charity, and got together an incredible group of people. And we have somebody who put up all the money for all the recordings and everything. So the very first record that sells goes straight to charity.
That's cool.
And after I get this all put together, I'm going to try and chase down as many people as I can and just get this ball rolling. And, you know, I don't want to raise a few $1,000s or a few $100,000 with this record. I want to raise $100 million with everybody else participating, and get everybody to, you know, have the slogan, you know, the most fun you ever had raising money for charity. You know, just people go do something to either make people laugh or make people go, wow, they're actually pretty good at this other thing. I want to be a 90-year-old man on my deathbed going, I raised all this money to do good for the world, you know, and feel good about it. It's one thing to be successful for yourself and your family, but when you can affect, you know, other people and do something like that, and just start this movement that turns into something. I hope it does. You know, I think the first project that we worked on is something, like I said, it's going to be one of the most exciting records I've ever put out, and for me is in my career. And you know, it's everybody I've played it for so far has had not seen it coming. So I hope I get the same response from the rest of the world.
Oh, that's a good teaser right there.
Yeah.
And it releases, you said, in April?
We're going to announce it on March 21st. March 21st
Okay.
is National Down Syndrome Awareness Day, and we've partnered up with NDSS, the National Down Syndrome Society, to help us, you know, launch this, and all the money will go straight to them. And yeah, I can't wait.
That's cool, man. Well, good enough. Thanks again so much for your time. We'll put links. Is the best place for us to send people is just your personal website to get to all things Tremonti?
Yeah. You know, I'm the only social media I do is I do Instagram and Twitter, and I'm just Mark T. Tremonti on there. And you know, you can just go to marktremonti.com or Alter Bridge, Facebook. So I got so many people.
All right, man. Well, you take care, and we'll watch for you down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. See you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.